Well, hi everybody. It has now been almost a month since my surgery. It will be a month next Thursday, I believe. And, well, first of all, I'll give you some more details about my recovery. Still going slowly, it's still very swollen. You can still probably hear in my voice that my jaw muscles are still partly paralyzed. But things have been improving, fortunately. I think Erin is getting around more and more, adjusting to my new face. And I've been to see my general practitioner, my local doctor, about my sleeping problem. I told him, that Valium didn't really work. And that sometimes the pain woke me up and I just didn't sleep well at all. And he suggested prescribing me a very small dose, 25 milligrams of an old antidepressant that has the side effect that it makes you very sleepy. And I said, okay, why not? And I tried it, and it seems to work really, really well. Whenever I take it, half an hour later I fall asleep, and I sleep almost all night without any problems. And so yeah, I've been sleeping much better. The only slight inconvenience is that I think I've been slightly more sleepy during the daytime, but I think that's maybe because I have some sleep to catch up to. Nevertheless, I tried last night, splitting the dose in half, do half a pill instead of the whole 25 milligrams, and that seems to work too. So I think I'll be able to find the right balance. But anyways, finally, I'm sleeping well at night. I think the pain situation has been improving. It's much less painful than it used to be. I can eat much more comfortably now. My mouth still doesn't open very much, but I don't have any pain when I swallow or anything. So things are improving. And yeah, it's still going to be a while, I think, for the swelling to be mostly gone. Maybe in a month it'll be mostly gone. But you might be noticing my eyebrows are getting really bushy. That's because Dr. Zakaski said, I believe, that I had to wait a whole month before I get them plucked, because they're gonna move a little bit, and it's probably a better idea to avoid changing your hairstyle or your eyebrow style before those things are done shifting. Anyway, so that's it for the healing situation. There's some slight improvements in that area. But today I'm going to do a video blog on a topic again for the first time in a little while, and I'm going to talk about fear. So what kind of fear? Well, last night Erin and I went to have dinner with some trans friends. They're a couple of two trans people, and they invited us, and we had a really nice supper and had a discussion that lasted a couple hours about many subjects, many trans subjects. But one of them that really, stuck with me and Erin is that the topic, the idea that many trans people do not transition because they're afraid. They're afraid of the possible outcomes. They're afraid that they're not going to pass. They're afraid they're going to lose their job. They're afraid they're going to lose their friends, family. They're going to lose everything, that it's going to be a complete failure. And one of these trans friends of ours, is saying that there's three kinds of transsexuals in her view. There's transsexuals who suffer, there's those who kill themselves, and those who transition. That's her idea. And basically she was saying, that most trans people should aim to transition probably as fast as possible, because that's the only way to not suffer and to not risk, even killing yourself, probably. And she confided that she felt very suicidal before she began her transition. And, I believe that that's probably true, that there's many trans people who are suicidal. In fact, I know it to be true. It's often said that trans people are the category of people with the highest rate of suicide. And obviously, we trans people know that not transitioning involves some mental pain, some discomfort, some suffering. I myself found myself to be very uncomfortable prior to transition. Nevertheless, I believe that not all people who transition are happy in the end. You know, transition can be a painful process, both for you and the people around you, and you won't necessarily find yourself happier after transition. So when you transition, it's a big gamble that you take that in the end you're going to be happier, but you don't really know for sure. You don't have any guarantees, obviously. You just hope so, and you base yourself on other people's experience. You know, before I transitioned, I looked at other trans people my age, and I saw that they had pretty good outcomes in general. You know, other trans people my age were generally pretty passable after they had been on hormones and generally integrated well socially. And so I thought, you know, my chances are probably pretty good. That being said, I've been fortunate. I was in a situation where I am a student, and my mother is tolerant, at least. I wouldn't say that she was supportive when I began, but she was accepting of the fact that I'm an adult and I can make my own life decisions. Not everybody has that chance. Not everybody lives in a tolerant city like Montreal. Some people live in the middle of nowhere in the southern United States, in Georgia, Alabama, in a small town, where if you transition, everybody will know, and you will probably lose everybody's trust and everybody's support. And some people still live with their parents, and their parents are very conservative, and they know that if they tell their parents might very well kick them out, and that they might be forced, you know, to live in the streets, to drop out of school. And some people are married with a wife and children, and their wife doesn't know that they're trans. And they know that if they transition, there's a big chance that their wife might take away the children, for example, or that their marriage might collapse. So not everybody is in a situation where transitioning is easy, and I think if you're in one of those situations, it's perfectly reasonable to have fear, to be afraid. And in fact, you know, I don't think that the fact that you know you're trans means that you have to transition as soon as possible. Because quite honestly, for example, if you're a teenager transsexual who's like 16 and you're still in high school and your parents have total control over your life, and you know there's a pretty big chance that they're going to kick you out if you tell them that you're trans, and you don't have your own source of income, and you can't really do anything about your transition because you can't even afford to buy hormones or to go to the doctor for this, then why should you tell your parents? Why should you try to transition at that age? I think the best thing you can do in that situation is inform yourself, and then once you're old enough to finally live on your own, then you can start the process. And maybe your parents will come around eventually. But if your parents kick you out when you're only 16 and you're not done with high school, maybe you can move to New York, you know, but you won't be able to get a good job. You'll be forced to work really hard, and you won't have a good education, and it's going to make your life hell. So, you know, transitioning as early as possible is not always the best option. In many cases, it can lead to transsexuals, you know, prostituting themselves because they have no other way of getting income. They just don't know what to do. They're desperate. And of course, for those people who are married with children, you know, if you know that it's going to ruin your marriage, and probably that your spouse is going to try to take away your children, then, or that you're going to have to divorce, and maybe you want to wait until your children are a little older so that, you know, you can be a responsible parent and save them some trauma, because it's going to be hard for them too. And I think most trans people would say no, you should just transition, you know, as early as possible. But maybe it's a bit selfish in some cases, you know, maybe your children deserve to have some peace of mind while they're young and they're growing up. And so I think it's reasonable, you know, for people to delay transition in some cases. I think that being afraid of transition is not necessarily such a bad thing, because when you're a trans person, and you're considering transition, you have to make a risk assessment. You have to look at what's possibly gonna happen. What do I risk losing? And you have to make your life decisions in function of that, just like everything else. Just like a financial investment. You shouldn't invest your money in something that there's a big chance you're gonna lose everything. You probably should be more careful. Well, transition, can possibly make you lose a lot of things. Of course, there's a lot of things that you can gain as well. But anyways, of course I say, okay, it's reasonable to delay transition, it's reasonable to be afraid. I think those are perfectly normal human emotions. I think that everybody should go at their own pace when it comes to transition. But I've also seen transsexuals who maybe are unnecessarily afraid. I mean, I can tell you there's a lot of trans people that the only reason that they don't transition is because they're afraid of not passing. And I think that originally myself, I was afraid of not passing. And of course, you see my facial features now, and even before facial feminization, you saw me in makeup, and everybody's been complimenting me, telling me I look very feminine, and that I've been blessed with good feminine facial features. But not that many years ago, I was a guy who looked fairly masculine, with a beard, and pretty good looking, I believe, and I just didn't see how I could possibly look like a girl. At that time, it just seemed impossible that I would ever be a convincing girl. And I decided to try hormones to see how much they could feminize me. And I knew that there were other transsexuals around my age who had good outcomes. But I believe in general, when you're a trans person, passing is generally almost always possible, because even if your face is as masculine as Arnold Schwarzenegger's, you probably can save up to get facial feminization surgery. And when you get facial feminization surgery, it's almost a guarantee that you're going to pass in the end. And of course, some people are very tall, some people are 6'2", 6'3", and they think that that's going to keep them from passing. But even there, that's not necessarily true. There have been some transsexuals who were that tall and who worked in very masculine environments who have successfully transitioned, not passed, and are now lead happy lives. So I believe that fear of not passing is probably not a good reason to not transition. And if it's your only reason not to transition, then maybe you should at least look into exploring your gender identity issues, and perhaps into hormones and facial feminization options and all that. Because passing is I think achievable by 99% of people if you put enough effort into it. And there's a lot you can do with makeup as well. So yeah, I think if passing is your only issue with transition, it's probably not enough of a reason not to transition. And I find it sad when I see transsexuals, who completely gave up on transition because of that. And I know many of them. I know some who live here in Montreal and who probably would be in a good position to transition, but they just give up because they never see themselves passing, and they see that as a complete obstacle. And I know some trans people will say, even if you don't pass, maybe that's not a good reason to not transition, because your happiness should not necessarily be linked to your passability and all that. So yeah, that's pretty much what I had to say for today. I personally think that transition is something you have to take it at your own pace. I don't think you should set dates. I'm gonna have hormones at this time, then so many months after I'm gonna have my letters for SRS and blah blah blah. I don't think you should do that. I don't think you should put too much pressure on yourself. But I do think that if you are tormented by your gender identity issues, you should definitely look into the options that are available to you. And even if you live in an environment where you think that transitioning is impossible and it would mean that you lose everything, you should at the very least keep informing yourself and become, an expert on the topic of transsexuality, so that when you become able to transition, you know exactly where to begin. And if you're in a situation where you think that transitioning is impossible, just remember that your life's not over. As long as you're alive, you can make changes, and you can do things to steer your life in a direction where you're going to have more control. If you're a teenager, you're going to grow up and you're going to be able to move away from your parents at some point. To live on your own, to have your own job. If you're married with children, your children are going to grow up. And you can divorce if necessary, but it's not true that it's always the case that you're going to lose your spouse because of transition. Some wives and husbands have been able to adapt to situations like that in the past, and there's more than you think. So yeah, I don't think fear is unreasonable, but I think you should probably try to examine your own situation as accurately as possible. At some point I myself used to be very much afraid of transition. And when I was in high school, I was so afraid of transition, I didn't even inform myself about transsexuality. I didn't even know I was trans. I didn't even tell anyone about my issues because I thought that everybody would make fun of me. But when I was in high school, I was in a situation where I was living alone with my schizophrenic mother, and I didn't have any source of income. So there was really nothing I could do. At that time, if I had come out as a transsexual to friends at school, it would probably have meant that people would have picked on me even more, and my mother wouldn't have understood, and I wouldn't have been able to do anything, and it would have been, that much more stress on my shoulders. So, at that time, I just couldn't transition, I don't think. I waited until I was in university and I had my own income and more freedom to do these things, and I was in an environment where people were more tolerant. And I think I made the right move in doing that, because now I'm very comfortable transitioning, at my own pace, and I haven't had really any negative incidents so far. Nobody seems to have rejected me because I'm trans, at least not in a clear way. Okay, so that's it for today's video vlog. I hope you enjoyed it. Of course, if you have any comments, feel free to post them. Feel free to post video responses. Feel free to send me messages. If you have long comments, I would encourage you to make a video response. Sometimes people post like 3 or 4 or 5 comments because they have a lot of things to say. In that case, I encourage you to get the courage to make a video response. Okay, so that's it for me, people. Bye bye.